Ange is the kind of guy who wears his heart on his sleeve. He's strong, he's confident. He knows that the way that he does things isn't for everyone. It takes a lot to be a manager. That is why I'm not going to be a manager.
And that brings me to, I guess, the elephant in the room in terms of, we talk about Pep, the coach, who you yourself mentioned being an outsider to it. What do you make of him as a person and how he dealt with you when you overlapped at Man City?
You can only become a checkbook manager if you're that elite. You can't just get that label. Trust me, there's no checkbook managers without the skills that he's got.
Money FM 89.3, it's time for Sports Minutes with me, Zia-ul Raushan. Now, he's been the last line of defence for club and country, faced football's fiercest forwards and felt the weight of the Three Lions on his gloves. Now retired and reflective, two-time Premier League winner Joe Hart is alongside me in Singapore ahead of StarHub's Football for All Carnival happening on 25th of May. From the Etihad to the Euros, from trophies to tough calls, we're going to unpack it all on Sports Minutes. Joe, great to have you with me. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm alright, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you with us. Welcome to Singapore. Is it your first time here? How are you enjoying it?
Yeah, first time. It's been busy, but yeah, really welcoming. Beautiful country. I'm looking forward to finding out more about it.
You're going to find out a lot about it, especially through the StarHub Football for All Carnival. How excited are you about the event itself?
Yeah, I knew about the one last year, and this year it seems to be getting even bigger. There's a great energy for Premier League football out here, so the concept's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds on Sunday.
You talk about knowing about last year's event. I had the privilege of sitting down with your former teammate Sean Wright-Phillips when he came by last year. Did he tell you any good things about Singapore?
Yeah, loads of good things. I know that he was trying to get on this trip, so sorry, Sean.
Maybe next year we get Joe and Sean together, right? In terms of what you know about the fandom in this part of the world, you talk about Premier League football meaning a lot. What do you know in terms of the teams supported here?
Well, I've either been meeting very disappointed United fans or very happy Liverpool
Me included.
fans. That seems to be the trend. There's a few young City fans out there. The new generation are realising that success, but that's the dominant teams.
Let's get the misery out of the way then and talk about Manchester United. We talk about the Europa League final, right? Manchester United losing to Tottenham 1-0. What a game of football in terms of what was riding on it and the result for your former team, Tottenham.
Yeah, it was big. It felt huge. They kind of both realised quite early on in the season that a push for a Premier League kind of place to get themselves in Europe was out the window. So they put all their eggs in that basket, and it's a risky one. It was great for Tottenham, obviously not so good for Manchester United.
And you talk about that push for Champions League football, right? There's going to be 6 English teams in the Champions League next year.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because when you were playing in the Premier League, it was 4 and it was much harder.
Yeah, I know, but credit to Tottenham and Manchester United. I think the winner of the Europa League goes into the Champions League. There's no questions about that, and that's fully deserved. I don't quite know how the point system worked to create that 5th place, but look, you want the Premier League to be as strong as possible. You want them playing in the Champions League. So yeah, I see it as a benefit. I'm out of the game now, so I don't really care what happened in my day. Like I say, keep the teams pushing, keep the money flying in, and keep the quality high.
Absolutely. Speaking of quality high, we're going to talk about Ange Postecoglu and everything he's done to end Tottenham's trophy drought. But first, on Manchester United, try and put your City cap away when you talk about them. Any sympathy at all for your former crosstown rivals?
Sympathy. I don't really have any sympathy for anyone. They've put themselves in the position that they're in. I was part, when I first started playing, I was very much part of a generation where Manchester United ruled. It's proven it's not that easy to keep doing it for such a long time. It felt like, especially under Sir Alex, that was never going to end. But look, there's no question there's some turmoil above, and it's showing on the pitch. It all filters down, and I'm pretty sure until they get that all in order, they're not going to find the relative success that they're after, let alone the dominance.
Absolutely, but we could talk for days about Manchester United. Let's shift the focus to the winners and Ange Postecoglu, a man you played for at Celtic. He obviously has now infamously said, "I always win in my second season." What is it about him that makes him a winner?
Do you know what? I stood... that was a quote he made. It wasn't him making a statement. He was asked a question. Someone who knew that he won in his second season, and he was merely just backing up the fact that he did. It's obviously turned into something else, and right now it looks like a huge ice-cold statement now that he's won. But Ange is the kind of guy who wears his heart on his sleeve. He's strong, he's confident. He knows that the way that he does things isn't for everyone. So he doubles down, and that was like I say, that was him just answering a question. And how the modern world works, it gets blown out of context. But like I say, with the victory and the trophy over his shoulder, it looks like a big statement now.
Yeah, it does. And you talk about Ange wearing his heart on his sleeve, right? That's evident in all the press conferences that he conducts himself. Is that going to rub the Tottenham hierarchy up the wrong way, despite winning that trophy?
I don't know. I don't know how they feel. They knew who they took on. He's been, like I say, he's consistent. If you look right the way through back, however he's conducted himself, I obviously was very aware of it at Celtic. He's brave, he stands strong. If he doesn't like a question, he'll let people know. But I don't think he's ever disrespectful. He doesn't cause any needless trouble. He just speaks the truth, and some people don't like that.
And you talk about knowing him during your time at Celtic, right? What do you think is going through his head at the moment? Does he build on this success with Spurs, or is it, I'm going to leave with my head held high because I've taken this club to win a trophy after 17 years?
I genuinely think he's just taking a breath. He gave everything to win that game, to win that tournament. And he took a lot, and he stood by his team, and he protected his team. He protected himself, his family, his principles. It takes a lot to be a manager. That is why I'm not going to be a manager, trust me. Because we're talking at we're having a conversation right now about a guy who's just won their first trophy in 17 years. Won the Europa League, European glory, and people are discussing whether he's going to stay in his job or not. It's crazy. But yeah, knowing him how I know him, he's just going to take a breath. He's going to enjoy it. He's going to let his players enjoy it because they've been through it as well. Look, I'm sure that he plans to build on what he's done. He's made that very clear in how he's spoken. He wants to build. He's got Champions League football for the team, for the players, for the club. Football's crazy, right? But right now he'll be planning to do well in the last game of the season. I know that. I've been a league title winner under him with games to go, and I thought maybe we'd just coast the rest of the season. Now he'll want more. He'll want everyone to show up on Sunday, and then deal with whatever's thrown at him.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens. I meant to talk to you about Manchester City, but because you brought up that coaching aspect, let's talk about retirement. When do you decide it's time for you to hang up your gloves?
I decided quite early in my last season. I signed a 3-year contract at Celtic. I went up and I didn't know how it was going to go, if I'm being honest.
Went pretty well?
Yeah, it went well. And it was a time that I was quite comfortable with. If it didn't go well, then it was my time to leave. That was how I felt. I nearly left before. I nearly knocked it on the head before because I just didn't feel like I quite had a place in football anymore, which was no problem. I'd had my fun, plenty of success, some good times, some bad, but I wasn't willing to just try and fit in for the sake of it. I wanted to do something that I wanted to do, and then when I got that opportunity, I couldn't believe. I was overjoyed, and then I knew that if I went up there and was allowed to play the way that I wanted to play in terms of my energy and what I brought to football, and Ange let me do that. That was why I think and speak so highly of him, because he understood me. I wasn't just a young footballer coming through. He understood my age and everything that I wanted to do. And then in that last season, what was I was coming up to 37. Was I going to really fight for a new contract? Did I want to go and play somewhere else? I definitely didn't want to go and play somewhere else. And I was living away from home. So in England, Scotland, it's only a 3-hour drive, which probably doesn't seem that much, but I was away from my children. They were coming up and enjoying it as best they could, but life was a bit broken. And I thought, basically I was thinking too much, and I thought, what am I doing? I'm happy. I've got an opportunity to play one more year at this great club, finish happy, leave happy, win, and get out of there. Because I honestly thought, when I was doing the maths in my head, which I've done all my career, if he moves here or I move there and that happens and this happens, I thought, I'm fed up of doing that. I'm not going to chase it. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I'm just going to leave it.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that insight, because sometimes when we talk to footballers, you talk about goals, you talk about trophies. Yeah. What you just gave me was the decision making, which is so hard because you have to consider so many things, right?
Yeah. Obviously, it's a different decision when I'm 19 and I'm moving to City. I've got nothing. I just don't care. I can go and do whatever I want. The world's my oyster. But when you got decisions to make about family and people you care about and love and what you want to do and what goes into moving to different clubs and what you're going to get out of it, I kind of did the math and I thought, what? Why would I chase something when I've got everything that I want?
Absolutely. Speaking of everything that you want, you had 12 trophy-laden years at Manchester City. So let's talk about Manchester City, where you spent a bulk of your career. Yeah. Before we look back on your time there, let's talk about the season that just is coming to an end, right? To me, underwhelming seems to be a word that comes to mind when I talk about Manchester City this season. Do you think that's fair?
Oh, of course it is, especially with the standards they've set recently. I think it just, if I'm honest, underwhelming, yes, but I think it really brings into light what an unbelievable run they've been on in recent years. You know, the four consistent Premier Leagues, Champions League, Super Cup, they've won the lot. And the fact that they've, potentially going to finish third or fourth, and just that's all they're going to get, just shows the dominance that they've had in English and European football recently, which is something to be proud of. It's not easy. It just shows the level that they're at, and I'm sure, like they have done before in the Sheikh Mansour era, that anything that needs correcting, they've corrected it. They'll be correcting it as we speak, and they'll be coming back just as strong next season.
Yeah, I think you used the word relative earlier, talking about Manchester United. That applies for City as well, because they've won so much so recently.
Yeah. Suddenly
finishing third without a trophy, in all accounts, it's still a good season, but by City standards, not so good.
Yeah, of course, but you've got to be able to deal with that. Football's not set up for Manchester City to win it. There's some top teams out there. There's other people with big budgets, big ideas. They're at the top table, and if you make mistakes, you get punished. And they've made a few too many this year. They'll admit that. They'll hold their hands up with that. Absolutely no problem. It's about how you react and how you recover. And like I say, every time that they've had a recent knock, probably in the last 10, 15 years, they found the answer, and I don't think it'll be any different.
You talk about big ideas, big budgets, right? We'll talk about Pep Guardiola, who has both those things. You obviously played for the man. What do you make of him as a coach?
I didn't play with him enough to judge him, I obviously, I'm like you, from the outside, you can't help but be impressed with him. He's had success everywhere he's gone. Played some brilliant football, great to watch, come up with new ideas. But as far as a player's perspective, I can't really give one.
And that brings me to, I guess, the elephant in the room in terms of, we talk about Pep, the coach, who you yourself mentioned, being an outsider to it. What do you make of him as a person, and how he dealt with you when you overlapped at Man City?
He was clean. He was honest. It wasn't what I wanted to hear. He took me away from something that I love doing and playing for a club that I wanted to play for, but he made a decision. How do I feel? Emotionally, probably I'd have had a stronger thing to say at the time. Definitely would have. But, I've grown up and realised that, like I say, the world doesn't revolve around me. He made his decision. Unfortunately, he was the most powerful guy at the time to make that decision, so I had to take it on the chin and look elsewhere.
Now that you are older, by your own admission, would you have done anything slightly differently?
No.
And there is this label to Pep Guardiola, a bit like him sticking to his guns in terms of what he wants, and then he goes out and splashes the cash to get the player that he wants. So the term used on social media, at least, is checkbook manager. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Look, you can only become a checkbook manager if you're that elite. You can't just get that label. Trust me, there's no checkbook managers without the skills that he's got. So yes, of course, he's able to buy players of high quality, but you need to be of a level. You need to have impressed people. You need to have the right people backing you. These are experienced people that back him. Barcelona, an unbelievable establishment. Manchester City, elite businessmen, the guys who've come in. So yeah, that's the reason that he's backed. He's because he's that good.
Absolutely, and the reason I asked you that is because coming from someone like you, I think it holds so much value in terms of the criticism that is unfairly, in my opinion, labelled at someone like Pep. Let's talk about the mental aspect. You touched on it earlier, not accepting his decision, right? As a player, as a person, how difficult is it to cope with that, and how did you deal with it all?
I accepted it. I just didn't agree with it, but that's life. That's opinions. Of course, I back myself in any situation, but he didn't think I had the skills of what was required to play in his team at that time, and he didn't have the time, he thought, to give me the chance to learn how to play that way, which was tough. Obviously, I told him I felt I could, and he told me that he felt I couldn't. So you've just got to deal with that. Like I say, I don't have to agree with someone, but to get on with them. We still got on through that process, still had a conversation. I said, look, we've got to find a solution here. I've got 3 years left on a contract that very few people are going to be able to afford. The club can't just let me go. I'm an asset. So we had a problem, but the only way you can solve a problem is just by being open and honest with each other. And that's what we did to the best we could. That was obviously more on me than it was for him. He got on with managing his team, and I did my best to find a solution. But yeah, it's life. Like I say, I look back, and before that, I was kind of writing my own contracts. I was making moves right the way up through the Premier League to the English national team. You know, playing a key part in a Manchester City team, winning leagues. You got to accept that not everything works like that. Every day doesn't work like that. And sometimes you've got to dig in and fight and be strong. Believe in what you're doing. You know, sometimes you've got to take a few hits.
Absolutely, words to live by. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that experience. Let's switch it back to the football and talk about the Premier League champions, Liverpool.
Yep.
In your wildest dreams, did you think Arne Slot would come along and slot in so seamlessly, replacing Jurgen Klopp?
Look, he's done an incredible job. Absolutely, wow, no doubt about it. It was they're big shoes to fill. But I think the support that he was given by the likes of Jurgen Klopp, you know, not leaving with any bad taste, he left because he was just shattered. And what he'd done everything that he could with that team and that club, and the club loved him for it. He backed the new man coming through the door. I actually played against his Feyenoord team the year before in the Champions League, and I knew they were good. Look, did I know he was capable of walking in and winning the Premier League? No, I didn't know that. But, you know, you need to give people that opportunity. But he inherited a very good team. He's obviously a very good coach, was dominant in what he wanted. And look, consistency won them the league this year. It wasn't necessarily brilliance. They had that sprinkled in, likes of Salah shining, lots of goals from all different angles. But he was just rock solid, consistent in what he wanted, and grew into the season. And as other teams fell away, he stayed strong.
You talk about rock solid, right? As a goalkeeper yourself, how much would you have loved to play behind someone like Virgil van Dijk?
I've played with a few versions of him in my career, so look, no doubt he's an unbelievable player, and I know people who've played behind him goalkeeper-wise, and they speak so highly of him. He's undoubtedly one of the best to play in the Premier League, and at the top of his game, he's one of the best defenders in the world. But yeah, I've had a few versions of him in my career, and I can only speak highly of the defenders that I've worked with, and having a good relationship with them, like, you know, I see Alisson has with Virgil van Dijk. The trust and the understanding and the timing that they've developed is priceless.
Who do you think is the best defender you've ever worked with? Because in my mind, it's either Vincent Kompany or John Terry, because you played with both of them.
Yeah, you're not far off. You're really not far off. Two incredible leaders both as well. Very impressive men, brilliant at football, great team men. And both in their own way really, really selfish. And I say that sounds like a negative, but it's not. They took the game by the scruff of the neck. They captained strong. They led. But they were really good, really, really good teammates as well.
No, I love that, and thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about a defender for Liverpool who's not going to be there next season. That's Trent Alexander-Arnold, right?
Yep.
The reason I'm asking you this is because sometime in your career as well, you decided to go on a foreign adventure. You decided to become the first goalkeeper to play in Italy, English goalkeeper to play in Italy, right? Mm-hmm. He's now decided that he, in all likelihood, is going to go to Madrid. And there's been criticism in terms of the fans saying you didn't give back to your boyhood club, blah, 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 blah. Do you agree with that criticism, or do you almost understand his adventure, or appetite for adventure rather?
I love the line that Liverpool have come up with, in that people are free to feel how they want to feel, because I know that there's nothing but love and respect in that dressing room for him. I know that the people close to him know what a big decision that would have been for him to make. Like I said, all the way through, I'm a pundit now, obviously, so I have to comment on these sorts of things. Whenever I've heard him speak, I've heard him, you know, a very polite, very dedicated footballer, someone who definitely loves Liverpool Football Club. There's no doubt about it. He absolutely adores the place and appreciates everything they've done for him. But look, he had a decision to make, and he's made it. He stands by that, I'm sure. Look, there will be criticism, of course there will be, because there's so much love and passion in football. But I think if you want to ask my personal opinion, I'm really pleased for him. I would have been pleased for him whatever he did. 2 amazing opportunities to either play for Liverpool, continue, or go and play for Real Madrid. He's winning. He's absolutely winning. So I wish him good luck, and I know that he'll go and represent England out there, and it can only be good for the national team.
Yeah, even as a United fan myself, I must say Trent Alexander-Arnold, what a footballer, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the opportunity. Let's talk about someone else you've shared a dressing room with, not necessarily as a player, but he was assistant manager at Manchester City during your time there. That's Mikel Arteta, who's now obviously the head coach at Arsenal, right?
Yeah.
It seems like he's hiding behind the mantra, trust the process, because again, Arsenal have ended the season empty-handed. At what point do you draw that fine line between trusting the process and tangible success?
Look, that's a question for the hierarchy at Arsenal. He's obviously got a great relationship with the club. They do trust the process. Difficult, he's difficult. Like I say, he's at that top table where you can't really afford to miss. They've got so close on a few occasions now. I don't know. I don't know what the process is. He's not been very clear with what that process is exactly. But I'm sure he's alluding to the fact that he feels like they're close to winning things. They've got a good squad. Who knows what they're thinking, but like I say, I think inside of Arsenal they very much believe in him, and he's got to keep trying, right? He's got to keep pushing. He certainly believes in himself. He believes he's on the cusp of something, but like I say, it's hard. It's really hard, and he appreciates that. I'm sure he does. It's not given to break the mould, to break into the kind of Liverpool or Man City realms of the Premier League, or the Real Madrids of Europe. So it won't be through lack of trying, I know that.
And they had a fantastic result against Real Madrid in the Champions League
yeah.
Right? But like you say, relative, it does not equate to Premier League success.
No, it doesn't. But only one team can win it. One team can win it, and the team that wins it is the most consistent one, who manages to handle adversity through the season, which every single team faces. Liverpool were good enough. City, the past 4 years, good enough to do it. They've proven the strongest. And it's going to be really hard to break that mould.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see what Arsenal conjure next season, because it's always next season. Like Patrice Evra said, right, it's a Netflix almost.
Yeah, he likes all that.
Let's talk about another one of your former teammates. It's almost, when I was preparing for this interview, right, looking through how many people you've shared your dressing room with, it was so hard for me to see through who we want to talk about. But I have to talk about Kevin De Bruyne, because what a Premier League all-time great he's been, right?
Yeah.
Where does he rank in terms of players you've shared the dressing room and pitch with?
Oh, he's right up there. What a player. We signed him from Wolfsburg. I think it was 60 million at the time. It was a club record. And, the kind of narrative then was it was someone who hadn't necessarily done well at Chelsea and gone to Wolfsburg, and, he's done really well. Of course he'd done really well. I know that Bayern Munich wanted him badly. And the more I look at it, he very much was a Pep signing, in my opinion, because it was the year that he decided he was coming, and like I say, I know Bayern wanted him, and that was where he was, and he knew what obviously the future held. But just an incredible talent, just so natural, so gifted, sees things that not many people see. If I were to say on a field, someone like David Silva sees things that I definitely couldn't see. Steven Gerrard, those sorts of players. But Kevin just did it with such grace, and I actually think he's capable of more for everything that he's done. I can't believe he's not scored more goals. His shooting and his precision and his ability to move the ball in different ways is one of the best that I've ever worked with. And the fact that he's people like Yaya fell away and Kevin just kept pushing and pushing and pushing is credit to him.
And you talk about him achieving more, right? Despite his age and injuries in recent seasons, there seems to be rumours saying he might stay in the Premier League. Liverpool is a team that comes to mind when a move is linked. Do you think it's at all possible that he could cut it at the highest level still, despite his age?
Of course he can. He's so quick and clever in thinking that even if he has, lost a little bit of nimbleness in terms of pace or sharpness through injuries or age, whatever that is, he's that kind of player who doesn't necessarily rely on that. He's so quick in his head, and his feet are just perfect. He's just a brilliant player. He'll be whatever level you put Kevin De Bruyne at, he'll be absolutely fine.
And because you have a personal relationship with him, I want to ask, is he the sort of person who will want to go out and prove something because of how it's ended with City in terms of the season they've just had?
I don't think that will be. He's not a guy who looks back. He really isn't. Like I say that not just because they've had a difficult season, but if you'd walked off after the treble probably a day later and asked him about it, he probably wouldn't want to talk about it. He's not that guy. He looks forward, he believes in what he's doing, loads of self-confidence, but no arrogance, just self-confidence. And like I say, whatever dressing room he walks into next season, they'll be mega lucky to have him.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out where he ends up. Let's talk about England now. And you made 75 appearances for them and kept 43 clean sheets, which is the second highest all-time behind Peter Shilton, which is an amazing record. But the question I have to ask you is, do you think you get the credit you deserve for the numbers that you produced?
I don't know. I'm not really bothered about credit. I know that I was picked to play for my country on those many occasions. That's credit enough for me. Obviously it's a very proud thing for family and friends and school colleagues and things like that. But I don't think I deserve that much credit because I didn't do anything with those caps. I know what success feels like on a football field at the highest level, and I didn't achieve that with England. So I don't expect too much credit, if I'm being honest. That's one thing that I'd love to have done better in. I'd love to have used those caps, and rather than just be a stat, I'd love to have something to talk about other than that. But I don't. Like I say, that's life. That's football. It wasn't through lack of trying, but we just never took that extra step.
And you've got 75 caps for your national team. Is there one that stands out?
My first will always stand out. I couldn't believe it. I snuck in properly through the back door to get my first cap. It was a friendly out in Trinidad that a lot of the people had gone home, and I just sneaked on at half time. But I think my first meaningful start was in 2010 at Wembley. After the World Cup, I'd been to the World Cup but not played. And then it felt like a little change in the guard, and I was given the number 1 shirt against Bulgaria at home, and that was a massive moment for me. That felt proper, and it was the start of my England journey.
I can see the gleam in your eye when you talk about it and how much it means to you. You talk about not necessarily achieving tangible success with them, right? The England team now have moved on from Gareth Southgate and the highs they had to Thomas Tuchel.
Yep.
Do you understand that change in terms of the steady hand that was Southgate, but almost the need for immediate success under Thomas?
Yeah, of course. I see it. It was difficult with such a short turnaround for the World Cup in terms of time spent. They've been very used to, obviously, Gareth's ways. They played with him for a long time and got very, very comfortable with that and had relative success. But England aren't the kind of team, especially with the talent and the young talent they've got now. I think the kind of building period's gone. And I think the idea of what they've gone with Thomas Tuchel in terms of was he the best man for the job? I think he was, that was available. And they've taken that plunge, believe in it. He's obviously got Premier League success, European success, of course, with a lot of the players. I like it. I want to see where it goes. I'm excited for it.
And you're going to have a front row seat, I'm guessing, for the World Cup because you're involved as a pundit for BBC. Yeah. How much are you enjoying that punditry aspect of your career now?
I'm really enjoying it. I'm new to it. And I said when I decided to stop playing football that, that was it. I'm stopping playing football. I'm not retiring. I'm way too young. I've got way too much life and love for football. And I was I set up my career during the last year of my football because I wanted to really move into it, and I saw a great opportunity at the Euros. I feel comfortable in front of a camera. I feel excited. I feel energised to talk about football because I think you need people with expert opinions rather than just someone who says that was good or that was bad. I like to explain things. I like to understand things. I want to really, really give respect to the high level that football's being played at and help people understand why things happen. It's not through lack of ability or laziness or complacency. It's just because of the levels that they're playing at and how the game unfolds.
Yeah, I think giving back to the game is not just through coaching but through expert opinions like yourself. Now that you're a pundit, does your phone ever buzz in terms of former colleagues saying, don't say this about me or say this about me?
No. I think everyone that I've ever played with knows I stand by what I say, and what I say nine times out of 10 is positive because I want the best for people. And like I say, I want to explain that things don't happen because someone's done something, with a lack of respect or lack of effort. Most of the time it's just because of the quality they're up against or, there's some adverse circumstances that's gone on in minutes before. So, and I'd feel very comfortable talking about anyone. And bad stuff does happen. Obviously, the moment a bad goal goes in or a goalkeeper, I have to break it down on the TV. Like I say, I'll do it from my own point of view because I've let bad goals in. I understand that it's not just being a bad goalkeeper. It's something's happened or one decision in your head you got wrong in a split second and you pay for it. And that's the top level.
No, I absolutely love that. 9 out of 10, you're positive. 10 out of 10, you're honest. And you've been mega throughout this interview, Joe. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on Sports Minutes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Money FM 89.3